You cannot stop behaviors with reinforcement. It just doesn't make any sense. So one of the biggest scams in the dog training world right now is the concept of positive reinforcement only training, or you might have heard of it as fear-free or force-free. And in reality, it's a scam. That's not the way that dogs see the world. As a matter of fact, it's not the way that any mammal sees the world. We don't see the world that way either. Their dogs are very much like us, as they are consequence-based learners. For every action, there's a reaction. For every cause, there's an effect. That's the way your dog sees the world. The problem is that humans put way too much emotion into every single interaction that they have with their dogs, and this is what most of the time creates behavioral problems. So when it comes to positive reinforcement only, that's just not the way the world works. And why would it be for our dog? How could we expect an animal to rely on solely reward in order to do well in our society? So here at Balanced Behavior, we do what actually works. We work with a very balanced approach, very much based in positive reinforcement. We're teaching dogs not only when they are doing good though, we want to reinforce that as much as we possibly can, but we also have to interact with dogs and clearly communicate to them when they are making mistakes. So we believe that a holistic approach of making sure that you reward the good, but also correct the things you don't like, that is how you're going to get the dog that you can live in harmony with. I think why positive reinforcement only is very popular right now is because it pulls on the heartstrings and it sounds good. It sounds like the right approach. And people don't really understand what discipline looks like. Discipline doesn't mean violence. It doesn't mean hitting your dog. It doesn't mean yelling at your dog. And I think these are what people commonly associate with discipline. Discipline would also look like, yelling and putting your dog in your crate as a form of punishment, or, people are using their hands or blasting them on tools, and that's just not the way to do it. That's not the proper way that you should be going about it. What it really is learning how to be able to communicate calmly, confidently with your voice, following through, right, on your actions, and learning how to communicate through your leash. Your leash is your most powerful form of communication, yet 99% of people don't know how to communicate with it. It's just the thing that's attaching them to their dog. So when you really learn how to communicate through your leash, that is when you're going to see your relationship with your dog completely transform. In order to achieve the relationship that you want with your dog, you need to understand how operant conditioning works. So operant conditioning is a theory of learning that has 4 quadrants. There's positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, positive punishment, and negative punishment. Now, positive and negative do not mean good or bad, which is a very common misconception in the dog training world. Positive means to add, and negative means to take away. Reinforcement simply means to make something more likely to happen again, whereas punishment means to make something less likely to happen again. It doesn't mean that you're going to torture your dog. It literally just means to make something less likely to happen again. By definition, positive reinforcement would be to add something to make something more likely to happen again. For example, would be treats, praise, or whatever when you are training with your dog. Negative reinforcement, an example of that would be leash pressure. Knowing how to use leash pressure, turning pressure on and turning pressure off when your dog is completing behaviors, right? The pressure turns off, remove, when the behavior is completed. Positive punishment is simply just adding something to the situation to make a behavior less likely to happen again. An example of that would be once you know how to use your leash, you can use your leash to give a correction for your dog. Negative punishment then would be the removal of something in order to punish a behavior or make it less likely to happen again. For example, when you ignore your dog, you are actively practicing negative punishment. You're removing attention to try to make the behavior happen less likely, such as like whining or crying. The real reason why positive only or force-free or fear-free is a scam is not only because it quite simply just doesn't work. You cannot, if you understand these quadrants, right, you cannot stop behaviors with reinforcement. It just doesn't make any sense. But that's not only why positive only is a scam. It's a scam also because it doesn't tell the whole truth. And it doesn't tell the whole truth very intentionally, because it is positive only, fear-free, force-free is just a marketing ploy. It's trying to make you, as the dog owner, think that you can train your dog using only sunshine and rainbows. And then, speaking from experience, working with people who have tried that route and failed because it doesn't work, it leaves dog owners feeling defeated and feels like they have to give up on their dog and their dog isn't fixable, when in reality, they just don't have the right method. Positive only is not the truth. It's not even what they do. So when you're talking about the quadrants, positive only trainers will actively use 2 quadrants. They will use positive reinforcement, like we talked about, which is giving rewards for a good job well done. But they also, every single one, uses negative punishment. Why don't you know that though? Because it sounds really bad. Negative punishment, that sounds horrible. I don't want to negatively punish my dog. But in reality, that's just basically ignoring your dog when your dog isn't making good decisions. But why wouldn't that be included in the marketing ploy for a positive reinforcement only trainer? Why wouldn't they say that they're positive reinforcement and negative punishment trainers? You can't solely rely on reward, and you shouldn't, but you also can't do the same thing with just correction. You need to have a balanced approach. You're rewarding the good and correcting the bad so that your dog understands how to do both, so that you guys can start clearly communicating with each other. So if you're looking to have a relationship based on trust and clear leadership, you need to know how to do both. You have to know how to reward your dog properly, but you also have to know how to correct your dog properly. So if you're looking for help in training with your dog, you need to find somebody that uses a holistic approach. They cannot just use correction, and they cannot just use positive reinforcement. If you want to really build that relationship with your dog based on trust and leadership, you need to know how to do both.